Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the AI Training Podcast. I have a very special guest today. We were on a panel together recently, and we had to continue the conversation. So, welcome to the show, Ben.
Hey, it's my pleasure to join you online. I can't wait to see where this conversation goes.
Me too. I've been excited about it all week. And why don't we start with a bit of an introduction? Can you please share who you are and what you do?
Sure, my name is Ben Baker. My company is Your Brand Marketing. We focus on internal, private, and secure conversations within companies. It's about driving change. So I've been in the communications game for 30 years, been in branding it that long. And about 10 years ago, I realized companies communicate fairly well outside their organization, but they do a horrific job internally. Our job is to try to fix that.
Very interesting. So you've the last time we spoke, you've had quite the storied career, and you're on the other coast, I believe. And how is it there?
You know what? Right now, it's spring has sprung. There's crocuses and oh god, all sorts of tulips, and I think that there's some daffodils sitting in our garden right now. So the grass is actually starting to grow. I might actually have to cut it next week.
Amazing. Well, seasons are changing, and so much is going on in terms of technology and artificial intelligence. And I'm
Mhm.
really curious to know a little bit about some of the things that you've been using it for. What tools have you come across that have opened your eyes to what's possible?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of tools that we use. I mean, obviously, ChatGPT is the number one. I think everybody's using that, and we're starting to use is it Sonora or Sora? Or I'm trying to remember what the new video uh,
Sona.
Soda. Yeah, we're in the process of testing that out right now to sit there and say, okay, what can it really do?
Hmm.
In terms of the technology, we've all heard the hype of, you put in a few lines of text and all of a sudden you have a 1 minute video. Great, but how good is it? And
Hmm.
how useful is it within practical corporate means? And so we're in the process of testing that thing out. We use 11 Labs every once in a while. We use that for voiceovers. We're using a project called HeyGen, which does translation from English to French to Cantonese to Filipino to whatever. And then we use, oh God, what is it? There's a package called Whisper, I believe it's called, and we
Hmm.
use that for doing transcripts. So there's a half dozen different pieces of software we're using on a regular basis to be able to help us, A, with workflow, and B, just to make things more effective.
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of tools that, you know, this tool creep of like, okay, I've got this, but now I need to connect this. And
Mhm.
how do you manage, the somewhat the overwhelm of technology and how new tools come out? And, what's your, do you have a strategy around so much newness?
I'm spoiled. I have a team, and it's their headache, not mine. I mean,
Okay,
my
perfect.
job is to sit there and look at the overall picture. I'm the big strategy guy. I'm the guy that sits there and goes, okay, let's look at the big picture and figure out how all the pieces are going to get together. I've got people tapping me on the shoulder on a regular basis, say, "Hey, listen, there's this new technology. We should look at this." I say, "Okay,
Hmm.
have have a look at it. Let me know you know what we're trying to do. You know who our clients are, what we're trying to achieve, what where the challenges are right now in our current workflow. How do we make this fit in?" And the challenge is you're right. A lot of these packages don't talk to each other. And the question is, are we going to get to a point where it's going to be a Zapier type thing where they're all going to integrate, or is there going to be somebody that's going to come up and is going to say, "Listen, I'm going to own the market, and I'm going to create a suite of products that are going to be able to integrate and work seamlessly in an Apple type environment." We don't know yet. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's a matter of keeping the eye open and sitting there going, "Okay, I've heard of this. Okay, what is it? How does it work?" And I don't need people to do deep dives on stuff. I just need people to give me a 30-second summary or 5 minute summary or whatever. Sit there going, okay, this is what it does. This is how it works. It's interesting. It's not interesting. It's interesting. Okay, this is why, and this is how I think it could make our lives better. Okay, now let's go test it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a tricky one for sure, but having a team so important, right? Being able to divide up some of that responsibility. There's no way we can do it all, right?
Not a chance.
So uh, in your world, what do you find the biggest challenges that your clients are faced with these days?
I think our biggest challenge is communicating effectively asynchronously across North America, around the world, and also dealing with situations where we have the work from home versus the return to office type situation. How do we get different parts of the organization to understand each other? How it's not only to listen to each other, it's but how do you get them to understand each other and understand what they need to do next, not only to make their part of the business better, but to make the business as a whole better. And it's all has to do with how do we enable that communication circle?
Interesting. Sounds like there's a big feedback component.
Very large feedback component. And sometimes you need, the feedback from 50,000 people, and sometimes you need the feedback of 50 people. And depending on what you need and how you disseminate that information, how you integrate that situation, how do you take that information that you've heard and send it back out into the universe to say, hey, listen, we've heard you, we've understood you, here's the disseminated version of what we've talked about, and this is what we're going to do next. So that's the thing is to make sure, because too many companies do a survey, a query, whatever you want to call it, and do nothing with it because they don't have the tools to be able to sit there and take the information that they've listened to and turn it into something that has a semblance of your reality.
You talked about surveys so important and probably underutilized in most companies. What are some ways to make that feedback actionable?
I think that the feedback action is actually telling people, what did you learn? What did you actually learn from the survey? I've come out and I've asked you 5 questions, and I've asked 10,000 people within the company those same questions. Where did it sit on the spectrum? Where did the majority of people answer this question? What were the outliers? What did we learn from this? How can we integrate this in with our current mission, vision, values, and goals? What are the things we're willing to change, and how are we willing to change it because of the information that we've gained? As I said, too much of that information goes into a black hole, and it's never, there's never that mirror out to the community, to the teams, to say, hey, listen, this is what we learned and this is what we're going to do next. And that's the part that's missing in most organizations. That's what leads to frustration. That's what leads to people either quiet quitting or actually quitting because they feel that they haven't been listened to, understood, and valued.
Sounds like you've been working in this area for a long time. What are some of your favorite books that have guided some of your ideas?
Oh, you know what? There's 1,000 books out there. There's 1,000 books. I really read a lot of articles. I find books have a place in time. There's very few books I have found that have stood the test of time. They're good for a year. They're good for 3 years. They're good for 5 years. There's How to Make Friends and Influence People, by Dale Carnegie. That's over 100 years old. There is Uri and Uris that I think, or Williams and Uris. Uri Williams and Uris. I can't remember what it is. But Getting to Yes and Getting Past No are two excellent books. But I find that I read a lot of the current articles. What's going on today? What's happening now? Like reading a book that was produced pre-COVID on leadership has very little semblance about what's going on today because there's been so much dynamics, so much change. The cultures have changed. How we communicate has changed. How we operate has changed so differently that you really need to sit there and say, what's happening now and what's the current thought process now? Because in 5 years from now, what you read today is going to change again. What you read today in 2 years could change again. And I think we need to evolve and look at what's the body of work that's happening now and what's the current thought now, and not look at these absolutes that if it was written today, it's going to be good in 50 to 100 years. I
Hmm.
just don't see that's practical.
Yeah, the information certainly is changing quickly. How have you seen things evolve, kind of pre-post COVID? What's your assessment of leadership in that area?
I find leadership is challenged. A lot of people find themselves, naked in the ocean, and the tide's gone out. People realize they don't have the skills necessary to operate in the new world. And unfortunately, a lot of companies are not paying for the training to be able to bring people back up to speed. I mean, work from home is a completely different dynamic. Managing a team that is across the city, across the state, across the country, and is bringing in information asynchronously, and are not all coming into one room to have a conversation and be dynamic, and dealing with talking heads instead of being able to see people's body language. Like right now, I'm using my hands to talk. I talk with my hands. You don't see that. You don't see what's going on from basically my neck down. So you don't understand, am I fidgeting in my chair? Am I using my hands? Am I tapping my toe? Am I looking at, do I have my phone on my desktop and I'm actually looking at that and spending more time looking at that? You're not getting the full picture. And because of that, leadership has to change. How you listen has to change. How you communicate has to change. How you motivate has to change. And all of that comes down to understanding the individuals. What are their wants, needs, and desires? What are their fears and aspirations? And being able to look at this, say, yes, there's a set of rules, a set of processes, a set of procedures, but we also need to understand that humans are individuals, and we need to be able to look at their individual needs and integrate it with the needs of the overall corporation.
Imagine working with large corporations. There's so many little challenges that from the outside, it's often not easy to understand. What are some of the best ways you've learned to really listen to your clients?
To me, it's not what they say, it's what they're doing. And it's a matter of saying, it says, our employees are really important to us. Well, show me. How are you proving to your employees that they're important to you? How are you proving to your customers that they're important to you? How are you proving that what you said is actually a priority? Like, are you putting your money where your mouth is? Are you putting your talent where your mouth is? Are you putting your energy where your mouth is? And a lot of corporations don't. A lot of corporations work ad hoc. Here's a set of rules and aspirations, but today this is important because I need to do this tomorrow. And therefore, those rules and regulations, those processes, procedures, mission, vision, values get thrown out the window because today this is a priority. And organizations need to go back to sit there and say, wait a second here. Is this who we are as a brand? Is this what we do? Is this why we do it? And does everybody within the company understand what are the things we're willing to do and what are the things we're not willing to do? What were we empowered to do? What are the type of clients and situations that we want to stay as far away from? And the more we can give that within the onboarding situation and ongoing within how we run our meetings, how we run our teams, how we run our divisions, how we run our company, the better off we are. It can't just be a 10-minute conversation. Here's who we are, a brand. Okay, now we're going to go out and live our lives and we're going to do whatever we want. It's got to be consistent. It's got to be consistent from the C-suite all the way down.
So it sounds like the work that you're doing. What's the expression of the your brand marketing in this? Because it sounds like a lot of internal work that you're doing. How does that reflect in a company's brand?
Well, it's your brand. It's your brand that I'm marketing. And it's a matter of sitting there going, the first thing we do with any company is we sit there and say, are you living your brand? Do you know what your brand is? Do your people know what your brand is? We'll bring in a graphic recorder. Now, that's the person who stands behind me in a room and actually draws the cartoon of the conversation that's going on. And we'll ask people, where did the company come from? Where is it today? Where is it going? What are the mission, vision, values of the company? Who are your top 10 clients? What are the things you stand for? What's your number one product? Why, and why is it valuable? And who is it valuable to? And we'll do that in small groups, and we'll take all these sheets of paper and we'll put them up in a room. And 9 times out of 10, the message doesn't match. Operations sees it differently than sales, differently from marketing, different from the C-suite, different from customer experience. And until all those pieces of paper match and everybody understands, hey, listen, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is why we do it. Companies cannot go from being good to great. Here's a great story. This is a story I've told on stage probably 100 times. Years ago at, oh God, I'm trying to think, shoe company, owned by Tony Hugh. I'm now trying to remember what the name of the company is.
Zappos?
Yeah, exactly. One of their employees got a phone call and he says, you got to help me. And he goes, what's wrong? He says, well, my wife died last week, and I just got 10 boxes of shoes that just showed up on my doorstep. And this employee didn't have to go to a supervisor, didn't have to go talk to anybody, said, no problem. I'm going to refund all your money. I'm going to send you a shipping label. We're going to get those shoes out of there. We are so sorry. And it could have been just left at that. That employee found out where this person lived, found the nearest florist, had a bunch of flowers. I had a huge flower arrangement sent from Zappos to this person's house saying, we are so sorry for your loss. The money that it cost them is insignificant compared to how it made that person feel. And that story has probably been told 10,000, 100,000, 500,000 times, and tells the story of the brand, of who Zappos is and how they treat their clients. And it talks about the empowering of the actual employee, that they could just go ahead and they know what was right. They know what needed to be done, and they just were empowered to be able to do it. And that's what companies need to get to. Is we hired you, we trust you. Here's the parameters. Here's who we are as a brand. This is what we do. This is what we don't do. Go do what you do best. And I think companies need to get to that point, and it's not easy. It is not an easy thing to do, but you need to be able to do that if you want to go from being an average company to a great company.
It's a great story. They definitely do some amazing work, that's for sure. I haven't actually got any of their shoes before, but it's definitely a brand that has a great reputation. I'm curious, how did you? You're very passionate about what you do, and it clearly shows that you, have been working in this area for quite a long time. How did this come to be? I'm always curious certain things. When did you discover that this is something that you want to devote your work to?
Well, I mean, 30 years ago when I was in high tech, I worked for very dysfunctional companies and I had very dysfunctional clients. And I realized what I didn't want. And I realized what didn't work and where the processes broke down, where people broke down, where systems broke down. And mostly it came down to communication. And as my company has evolved and as my companies that I worked with got bigger, I realized that the challenges were internal communication. Brands faltered externally because there was bad communication internally. If you don't have champions inside the company, if you don't have empowered people, if you don't have people passionate about what they're doing inside the company, no company will ever grow, because their people are dialing it in, their customers are going to see it, they become commodities, and then all of a sudden it becomes a race to the bottom. But the companies that actually are passionate about what they do, have a story to tell and tell it, are the companies that survive and thrive. And just by looking at that, seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly through hundreds and hundreds of clients over 30 plus years, I realized that where I am is I'm the storyteller of brands. I help companies tell their stories. I help companies build that emotional tie, not only internally within their companies, but help build that story out so the employees want to tell it to their customers. And that's how brands grow. And that's what I've always wanted to do. So it's evolved over time, and it's ebbed and flowed, and you try new things, but that's what I've always come back.
That's cool. There's one of my favorite books related to story and brand is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Yeah.
I was just introduced to it less than a year ago, and it's changed my website copy and done a whole bunch of things that I appreciate the value of good storytelling and what it can do for a business. So it's meaningful work that matters. What you know, in the way of story, are there some things that you've learned about story that have been instrumental in your work?
The big thing about story is people want the anticipation. They want to be taken along the journey. They want the ebbs and flows. They want the highs and lows. They want to be emotionally grabbed. Telling somebody, I started my business, I made $10 million and I retired. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about that story. And the people who do probably can never afford what you have to sell them anyway. The people that are going to emotionally get involved in your company, the people that are going to sit there and say, I want to work with these people, are the people that hear the story in ways that resonate with them. So I'm going to tell the story to bankers different than I am to engineers, different than I am to marketing firms. It may be the same story, but I'm going to make sure that the analogies that I use, the references that I use, the language that I use imprints on the people that are in front of me in the audience. And that's what a great story does. And a great storyteller. A great storyteller can sit there and say, okay, I'm in a room full of CEOs. The story's got to be shorter. It's got to be more to the point. It's got to give the ability to build the trust, the know, the like, but it's also not, they also don't need all the hay in the barn. When I'm telling the story to a room of engineers, they want the data. They want the backup. They want the proof. And the thing is, you're going to elongate the story to be able to give them what they want and what they need. So we need to be able to be cognizant of who's in the room. Who are we telling the story to? Why are we telling the story to them? What do we want them to do once they understand the story? And how do we get them emotionally involved?
Excellent points. How important is humor in a brand
I
storytelling?
think humor shows your humanity, but humor has got to be done in a way that is going to be humorous to the people that you wish the brand to attract. The first thing we need to understand is a brand is designed to repel as many people as it is to attract. You probably want to repel far more people than you attract with the story and with the brand. This is the tribe. These are the people that have this understand. I understand what problem that they have. They understand that I can fix the problem. They need that problem fixed, and they can afford my solution. And they see it, they can justify paying me for that solution. Those are the people that we care about. The people that sit there and go, wow, that's a great solution, but they can never afford it, might be people that are going to tell other people about the story, but they're not going to be clients. And then there's the majority of people that say, I don't care because I don't have that problem. So we need to build our humor in such a way that it attracts the people that are part of our tribe, and be cognizant of the humor that we use, that it is such a way that it's probably more self-deprecating than it is about humor that's going to point a finger at them. It's got the humor finger is going to point inward, not outward. Because if somebody doesn't take that humor properly, then they're going to be offended. If they say, "Oh, they're making fun of themselves," okay, we can live with that a lot more than we can have somebody making fun of me.
Definitely a safe bet. Self-deprecating humor in some ways, always a good. People have compassion for others, and it makes the client or who they're working with feel a little bit of brevity or levity in their situation. So, um,
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, humor is humanity, and and that's what we all are in the end. We're human beings. We all bleed the same, and we all have wants, needs, fears, aspirations, desires. The question is, are my hopes, needs, fears, aspirations, and desires the same as the one of the company? Do I identify with this company or not?
mhm.
And if I don't care about what they have to say.
Yeah, it's so important. Tell me, Ben, what are you most excited
I
about?
think I'm excited the most about the future and what's next, because you don't know what's next. What you have to do is keep one eye on the horizon and one eye in the here and now. And our first conversation about, you don't know where AI is going, you don't know where technology is going, you don't know where business is going. Are we going to still have people in 10 years from now driving downtown and spending half of their life going up and down elevators? I have no idea. I have no idea how decentralized work is going to become, how communication is going to change. The dynamics of the office are going to change. The dynamics of leadership are going to change, because a lot of it comes down to the culture of the Gen Zs and the alphas coming behind them. I mean, the alphas are known as honey badgers, for God's sakes. What does that really mean when it comes to how they're going to integrate into work in the next 15 years? Nobody knows. So what we have to realize, that change is the only constant. And the more we can be open to sit there and say, okay, people are thinking differently, people are acting differently, people are reacting differently. Okay, how does that affect our business? How does that affect our customers? How does this affect the people inside our organization? What do we need to do to change in order to do that? I mean, that's the basic premise of my second book, Leading Beyond a Crisis, a conversation about what's next. It's about being resilient, adaptive, and creative. The only thing we can be in life and truly succeed is to be adaptive, creative, and resilient. Everything else is, every skill that we have, every technology we have is going to become outdated and outmoded. The other day, I had to take apart a computer that was running Windows XP. Somebody died. They had an old XP computer. I had to go digging into the archives of my technology to find an XP CD-ROM to be able to boot this thing up so I could format the hard drive. It's totally outmoded, it's totally outdated, but in its day, it was a cat's meow. In its day, this was the fastest, most up-to-date, most skookum computer you were going to get. But today, it's a boat anchor, and not even a good one. So we need to realize that the world is going to change, and we as human beings need to change along with it.
Yeah, things are moving super fast. That's 100% for sure. It's funny, a friend of mine had his laptop had an issue, and he probably set himself up on that same kind of machine, those big blocks. I think it had a CD player and a CD writer. Remember when we used those
CDRWs and
constantly?
DVD ROMs and all that kind of fun stuff? Absolutely.
Yeah, so he had the tower, and we were going to do a podcast interview on that thing, and I'm like, well, you could use your phone, and it'll probably be more powerful than whatever device you got there. But yeah, things have definitely come quite a long way. What's your biggest challenge as a leader?
I think the biggest challenge about being a leader is to being open to being wrong, and realizing you don't have all the answers. You can't know it all. You can't see it all. You can't be everywhere. And sometimes you just have to let other people be wrong, and you have to let them learn from it. Sometimes you just have to let people go through the motions, figure it out for themselves, and realize that, what? The solution that they came out may not have been optimal, but it was the best one that they could come up with. And they tried, and they worked, and they had the company's interests at heart, and they were trying to do the best that they could. And sometimes that's not the same way that you would have done it, and that's okay. Because the trick is to sit there with those people and sit there and say, don't beat them up about it. Say, okay, what can we learn from this? What can we learn from this? And sit there and say, how do we move forward? How do we make this better? And I think that leaders need to not micromanage. They need to stop thinking they know everything. They need to stop thinking that they have the best solution within their minds, and that their solution is the only solution. Because there's 1,000 different ways to get from A to B. We might have only thought of 300, which means there's 700 different ways that we have never thought of.
So leaders shouldn't be afraid to be wrong. They're likely going to be wrong along the way, and the people that they're working with are also going to be wrong. So having a bit of compassion, self-compassion for their own inevitable poor decisions,
Exactly.
and those around them as well. That's good advice. Sometimes we're a little bit hard on ourselves for some of the.
A lot of times we're hard on ourselves. We beat
Yeah.
ourselves up far more than we deserve. But that's human nature. Human nature is you expect yourself to be perfect, and none of us are.
There's a book that I've been reading that I quite enjoy on the topic called "The Gap and the Gain." Are you familiar with that
Not
one?
one I've read.
So it's a pretty simple idea of the gap is usually if you're measuring out into the distance at a target or horizon that keeps pushing away.
Okay.
And the gain is measuring backwards
Mhm.
as you've made progress on, you're better than you were yesterday. Or one simple idea that I've implemented recently is this idea of having 3 wins,
Mhm.
just 3 wins, and then reflecting on those wins at the end of the day. And having this rhythm of accomplishing just those 3 things and a bit of reflection gets you feeling like a winner, giving you that momentum and self understanding that is your that rhythm of you do that for a few weeks and you've got a number of things that you've accomplished and you're not so focused on the thing that you haven't quite got to yet, that bigger goal. So it's a good way. The Gap and the Gain, for anyone who hasn't read it, it's really a nice read.
Well, Warren Buffett at the beginning of every year takes a list and writes down the 20 things he wants to accomplish. He rips the list in half and puts half of the list in the drawer. And then he rips the list in half again and puts those other things in the drawer. So that way he sits there and goes, okay, I've now only got 5 things that are the top things that I need to concentrate on. Once I accomplish these, then I'll look in the drawer and I'll find number 6 through 10. I may never get to 11 through 20. But he realizes that until you accomplish numbers 1 through 5 and you focus on them and you dedicate your time and your effort to them, you don't deserve to go to number 6 through 10. Because we can't split our focus 10 different ways, because if we do, we're not going to accomplish anything.
Agreed. What's one of the ways that you help prioritize what's most important?
I'm a list, I build lists. I am a
Mhm.
big believer in lists, and I'm a big believer of checking things off a list. Especially when I'm dealing with teams that says, look, we need to make sure we accomplish this and this. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I just need it done. And I want people to come back and say, this is done. This is what I did. This is what we did. This is where it goes next. And I want to be able to check it off and just say, okay, fine. Then it's out of my head and I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. But if I'm trying to manage 100 things at the same time and just do it all in my head without a sense of priority, nothing ever gets done. And there's no accountability either.
What's your approach? Are you a classic pen to paper list maker? Are you using some software that you like?
It all depends. I mean, here's the thing. I got Microsoft Word documents and I've printed them out and they're up on a bulletin board there and they get crossed off. And I also have things that I do in Excel spreadsheets. I also have stuff that I do in project management software, depending on, is it for me or is it for a team? If it's for a team, then we're going to use project management software, and it's going to be available to everybody. Everybody can see what everybody else is doing. Everybody can sit there and say, "Hey, listen, this is running a couple days behind. FYI, so it's going to not mess everybody else up." But if it's just me, it's pen and paper. It's up on a board. It's visual, and I can sit there and go, "Okay, that's done. Okay, that's done. Okay, that's done. Oh, wait a second. I need to focus on that. Okay, that's my priority today."
Yeah, there's something somewhat therapeutic about crossing something off a list, pen to paper.
Mm-hmm.
There's that tactility there. And yeah, to your point, it makes sense that if it's an important project, that it's organized where people are getting notifications and you're leveraging that kind of aspect of the technology. And some visuals if you need to print something out. That's, I've got a couple things that I'm looking at behind the camera that, just help you stay focused on those most important things like you were mentioning. So very, very important stuff. What are some of the things that you wish that organizations would know already that just seems to be something that maybe they might be overlooking?
I think that people need to know the power of storytelling. They truly do. They need to understand the story of brand, and they need to understand the story of the power of storytelling, and they need to understand the difference between brand, marketing, and advertising. And advertising is about the here and now. It's about selling what you have in the house, and I need to get stuff out the door, and I need to make money. Nothing wrong with that. Marketing is telling the story of the brand, and brand is who you are as a company. And your story supports your brand and is told through your marketing efforts. And I think that a lot of organizations think that they're telling the story. They think they're branding, but what they're truly doing is advertising. And you need all three, but you need to be able to understand what's short term, what's long term, and realize that certain mediums are short term, and certain mediums are long term, and certain mediums are ineffective. And what are you doing there in the first place? I will never be on TikTok. There's no reason in the world for me to be on TikTok. I'm not going to do the TikTok dance. I'm not going to sit there and try to be cute and entertaining. It's not who I am. It's not who my clients are. It's not what my brand is. I focus on telling my story on LinkedIn and sometimes on Twitter. Sorry, X. But I sit there and know where the mediums are, where my clients are, what they expect from me, and how to use those mediums to tell my story effectively. When we try to be everywhere, when we try to do everything, when we try to make sure that we're covering all bases, all we're doing is we're spreading ourselves way too thin. And that's where brand identity breaks down.
Do you have any contrarian views on marketing?
Yeah, I would say that most of my views are contrarian.
Okay.
Without being flippant about it, I think that most of my views are very contrarian. I don't believe that we need to market to everybody. I don't believe that every customer is equal. I don't believe that life is fair. I believe that we need to be able to focus our time, effort, and energy on the people that matter to us and we matter to them. And that's really what their symbiotic relationship is about. It's about building tribes, and it's building trust, and it's building an ecosystem where there is a sense of belonging. And that means that probably 98 to 99% of the people are ignored. But if 99% of people are ignored, you still have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people to talk to in the world. So it's a matter of looking at it that way and saying, how many people can you really service? Here's a perfect example. Years ago, a buddy of mine had a magazine, a fairly substantial magazine. I think they reached 150 or 200,000 in terms of a distribution list. And somebody backed out at the last minute, and he offered me the back cover. And it's a business style magazine. And he said, listen, I'll give you the back cover. It's normally 50 or 60,000 bucks. I'll give it to you for $5 because we've got to go to press in 2 days. And I said, I don't want it. And he goes, why? I go, because if it works, I'm toast. If all of a sudden 500 to 1,000 people contact me, I can't handle the business. And I'm going to disappoint 90% of them. And all of a sudden that's going to reflect badly on my brand. I don't have the policies, processes, procedures, people in place to be able to have 500 to 1,000 people contact me and be able to take care of them in a meaningful way. So why am I going to spend $5,000 and have half of 1% or whatever it is contact me, which was realistic? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So we need to have an identity of who we are as a company and be able to say no far more than we say yes. But we need to be able to say yes because that and gives us the ability to say, but we need it to work for us, and we need to work for our people, and we need it to work for our clients. So yeah, I'm a contrarian.
Yes, it's contrarian views. They're important, I think, especially in marketing. It helps differentiate your brand against what people are often taught. You mentioned something about tribes and community. What ideas do you have to help brands create more loyal tribes and more engaged communities?
I think you need to be authentic. And you need to have people that are running the communities that are not running the communities off the side of their desk. You need to have people within your organization that are dedicated to building and running the community. That's their job. That's what they get paid for. That's what they're doing all day, every day, is managing and building the tribe. And if you don't have a series of people that can be there, that can facilitate, that can integrate, that can introduce people, that can elevate the conversation and elevate, the identity of the tribe, it's going to die. How many LinkedIn groups are there that have absolutely no engagement whatsoever? They got built out. They got 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 members. And you go into there and you read it, it says, 30 days ago was the last message. Nobody wants to be part of that. People are still part of that because they forget to unsubscribe, but they're not really there. You want people that are there, people that are saying, "Oh my God, I need to see what's going on What's new? What's exciting? What's the next video? What's the next thought process? What's the next, what's the insider scoop that I'm going to get because I'm on the inside that nobody else is going to get?" Even if it's just a free pair of socks when you go on Tuesday afternoon to this new location, and it says, because you're a loyalty member and you mention the word blah, 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 you get a free pair of socks. You know what? People sit there and say, they got nothing for nothing. And they say, hey, listen, I got information that nobody else got. And that makes me feel special. And we need to build tribes that way. We need to make people feel special, people valued, listened to, understood, that they have the inside scoop, and that they have the ear to be able to help make the tribe and the organization that's behind it better. Not easy to do.
These large LinkedIn groups, I'm certainly a member of a couple of them, and they're, most are not as active as, and even the quality of the shares there's not a lot of incentive. What's your thought on paid memberships and, the benefits of being part of something exclusive?
If you're adding real value. I mean, I belong to 3 different groups that went paid. I dropped all 3 of them because I said to go, okay, if all I'm doing is I'm going to pay for what I got for free, why should I stay? If you're going to give me something, I'm going to go, oh, I want that. I need that. That's going to make me better. That's going to give me some emotional tie. It's going to give me some benefit in some way. And I'm going to sit there and say, yeah, it's worth it. It's buying the entertainment book. If anybody buys the entertainment book anymore, that thick book that costs you $110 or whatever it costs you for the book, but it's got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of coupons in it. And you get to try restaurants all over the city and all over North America because you've got the coupons. And it gives you that ability to go out there and try all different things because you're part of that tribe. And now they've got it online. So you can just show your coupons digitally and away you go. Or, when Groupon was hot and heavy, you paid for those things and you paid for your Costco membership because you feel you're getting value for your money. If you don't feel you're getting value, you're not going to stay, and you're not going to tell other people, "Oh my God, it only cost me $40 a month, but it's so worth it. You need to be part of this." Those are the people you need. Those are your brand champions, and those are the people that are going to build your tribe and going to enable you to have a thriving paid for business.
What are some of your ideas for helping brands increase the value that they're uh, giving to their customers or clients?
Number one, listen to them. Listen to your customers. Don't assume you know what they need. Don't assume you know what they want. Don't assume you know what's important to them. Listen to them. Actually take the feedback. Actually do something with it. Actually modify, if you got customers that are constantly on Yelp or Reddit or whoever, and they're constantly whining and complaining that they go into this one location that you have and there's always a lineup and there's never enough staff and the location is always dirty. Why are you ignoring that? Why are you ignoring that? Why don't you have an efficiency team walking into that location the next day or the next week taking pictures and say, okay, we're going to change stuff, and then having people online say, hey, listen, we heard you. You're right. We walked in there. We saw, here's the pictures that we came up with. We're going to be doing this, this, and this, and we're going to fix this. Or, you know what? We realize there's not enough those staff to be able to do this. We're going to open up a second store a mile away because, you know, it's close enough that people are going to still come to it. But what it's going to be able to do is we're going to be able to split the between two different stores, and both stores are going to be able to be efficient because there's just too much volume from one particular store. But you got to talk to people. You have to sit there and understand what they need, and then you have to tell them that you listen to them, you understand them, and this is what we're going to do to fix it, and this is what we're going to do to make it better because we value you as customer, instead of just ignoring.
This has been amazing, Ben. You've shared a ton of great ideas, wisdom, and I really appreciate you making some time to share with us. So thank you for being here.
Mark, my pleasure. I mean, I never knew where this conversation was going to go, but it went in some really fun and fascinating ways. And I hope people got some value out of this. If people need to get,
I think so.
Go ahead.
I've been listening attentively, and fortunately, it'll be transcribed, so we'll get a lot of good notes out of it. For people who want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
The easiest way is through my website. It's www.yourbrandmarketing.com. That's access to all my ebooks, my videos, my social media, my programs. There's a link that you can book a 30-minute consultation with me over Zoom. We can sit there and we can talk about your business and see if there's things that we can do to support you. Everything is there at your.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Ben, for making some time. This has been the AI Training Podcast. If you want to see more episodes like this one, you can visit openaitraining.com. And I'm looking forward to following your journey and having another conversation like this one in the future. So thanks again for your time, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
This has been a lot of fun. So let me just hit stop there.